Who can split the sea, still wait for me? Why am I walking blind, stumbling? You carry me home. You carry me home. I can see you in the moonlight. I can hear you through the night sky, whispering my name, calling me back home. I can see you in the distance, loving me this moment suspense. Help me to believe your love is all I need. You, it's always you who can mesmerize these blinded eyes with the flicker of your light. Me, it's never me. Oh, it's not about selfies or loving more of me, but denying myself for the least. You carry me home. You carry me home. I can see you in the moonlight. I can hear you through the night sky, whispering my...
So there are many lies about the Catholic Church that we've been told. We're going to talk about 5 of those. And I'm just thinking right off the bat, the lie about the Catholic Church in the 2nd century. St. Justin Martyr literally had to write a letter to Emperor Antoninus Pius, the Emperor of Rome at the time, letting him know that no, we Catholics do not eat babies. So that's something that you might want to know. But we're not going to talk about that lie tonight. We're going to talk about 5 lies that we hear now in our time. Hi, my name is Father Christopher Plant. I am the pastor of St. Bartholomew here in Katy, Texas, and I got here to my right.
And I'm Father Ricardo, and I'm the parochial vicar at St. Bartholomew.
And to my left.
And I'm Christopher Meyer, and I am a pastoral year seminarian at St. Bartholomew.
We're glad that you're here with us tonight. Welcome to Conversing Clergy.
Here I am at your door. Would you let me in?
So we're very glad that you're here with us tonight. Welcome. I don't know what Christopher's doing all of a sudden. This wasn't part of the preparation. I'm not sure why what is that thing?
This is mine now.
Well, I shouldn't call it a thing. It's a crucifix, but there's other stuff on it. What's on there? What is that?
This is the trophy that one of the teams receives for winning the Priests versus Seminarians basketball game.
He's building up, by the way, to something. And you said one of the teams won. And which team would that be?
That would be the Seminarians, Father.
Unbelievable. You're shameless. You know that?
Absolutely, he bought it
shameless.
in an antique store.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like it came from an antique store.
Not real.
Oh, man. I was actually at that game, by the way. And there were a lot of St. Bartholomew people, a lot of parishioners from St. Pius V. We had parishioners from everywhere. St. Francis Cabrini, because our former parochial vicar, Father Nicholas, was playing as well. I heard that he scored 2 3-pointers.
Yeah, he kind of led the comeback that fell short.
Oh, yeah. It's just too bad. But, he scored 0 last time, so we can say that he scored infinitely more this time.
That is true.
This is very true. I know my math. I know my maths. So very good. By the way, before we continue, if you can please help us out with some things. We do have a Facebook page and also a YouTube. I have my own YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on my Facebook page, Father Christopher Plant, please like this video if you like it. Hit the follow button and also hit the like button too. Or if you're watching this on the St. Bartholomew page, then you can also do the same over there. Or if you're on my YouTube channel, you just saw the graphic there. You can like the video if you like it, subscribe, and also hit the alarm bell so that you can actually get the alerts. Because if you subscribe, they may not let you know that I'm live right now, or that we have a video that's been posted up. So again, we really appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, if you don't like the video, well, you know what to do. All right, moving forward. So, wait a minute. We got these coffee mugs. You may be asking, why is our logo a coffee mug? And it's because coffee helps with conversation, right? And so every time we get together now for our Conversing Clergy chats and also for Conversing Clergy Live, we just pick a mug, and a mug that speaks to our hearts. So I can tell you right now, the mug that I have has a stormtrooper on it, and it says Employee of the Month. I just really like this, especially when I'm with my staff at St. Bartholomew. They're sitting there, and I say, "Hey, you know what? Guess who this is? Employee of the Month." And they can't tell who it is because it has a mask, and so they have to guess which one has the mask. Is it our DRE? Is it our business manager? Who knows? So, and you got a mug there as well. What is that?
I think this is an R2D2 mug. I actually just like it because it's big and deep, but it's also doesn't take a lot of space. So I can fit a lot of coffee in this mug. Just
Big.
a pragmatic mug choice.
Big and deep. Would that be like a 300-pound theologian?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And what do you have there, Father Ricardo?
I have Hebrews 11:1. Unfortunately, I drink with my right, so people don't see it, the quote. Anyway, it says, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Just a reminder.
From Scripture. Man, you're going all noble on us. Oh, well. By the way, you can also chat with us if you want to join in the chat, just typing in, and if it's a comment that we would like to read out, then we can do that. Or if you just have a question that you would like for us to answer as we move through. So this is more of a dialogue with all of you. Again, this is Conversing Clergy Live, so you are invited into the conversation that we have. So again, we're talking about tonight 5 lies that we have been told about the Catholic Church. And Father Ricardo, I think you're going to kick us off with lie number 1. Which would you say would be the lie that you want to talk about?
Okay, well, lie number 1 is, I'm pretty sure a lot of the Catholic viewers out there have probably been in conversations. People say that the Catholic Church is against reason. And of course, that's a lie. The Catholic Church is not anti-rational. It has a profound respect for reason. And if you don't believe me, ask any seminarian, because they go through philosophy before they actually start theology. Right, Christopher Meyer? How many years of philosophy did you study?
Well, I have a weird situation because I studied some in college. So typically a seminarian does 2 years of studying philosophy.
Yeah, or a bachelor's degree in philosophy. Yeah, so anyway, I mean, that's just one example of, that the church is actually has a deep and profound respect for reason. The church, the Catholic Church is very distrustful of emotion.
Right. The passions is another word I've heard used.
Yeah. And I mean, no offense, Protestants, sects, but, Protestantism favors more emotion as the content of religion, like a feeling of dependence, right, of God.
I would say that that's definitely true now. That may not have been as true under Martin Luther. Mm-hmm. They may not have been driven by it so much in that way. But I would definitely agree with you, especially because the trend of history is such that when you don't really accept if you don't accept doctrine, objective truth, which is what happens once you begin to split over and over again, and nobody's really sure because they don't have the advantage of magisterium and a pope. Then what are you going to go for? You're going to go for what you feel is right.
Exactly. Yeah, especially in this realm of morality. On the other hand, the Catholic Church believes that there is an intellectual base, right, in our religion, right, in our relationship with God. Now, reason by itself, the Church teaches. Actually, I have a quote from the First Vatican Council. It says, the First Vatican Council holds and teaches that God can be certainly known from created things by the lights of human reason to be the beginning and end of all things, right? So we believe that through reason alone, you can actually arrive to the truth that God exists.
Right.
Now, obviously the church teaches that reason has limits, right? Because we cannot know exactly who God is if God himself doesn't reveal himself, right? And now we come to a point of these two terms, right? Revelation and reason. Revelation is not against reason, right? It's not irrational, but it's coming from another source, not the human intellect, but is the divine intellect, the logos, right?
Yeah.
And so that he revealed himself first and foremost, of course, in Jesus Christ fully, but of course he has been inspiring, prophets and sacred authors of sacred scripture, for example. And but something interesting is that even though God has revealed to us some mysteries that we cannot know completely, for example, the Trinity, right? That God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's not irrational to believe in the Trinity.
And that's because we have a reasonable explanation. It doesn't actually explain it, but it shows that it is possible because of distinctions.
It's not
a
contradiction.
Not a contradiction. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a square circle, right?
Right.
For example, Peter Kreeft, I love this example about the Trinity. He says, well, we have some notion of what, we can play with this notion of being and person. For example, a cat, Kateri, your cat.
Yeah, because I got my cat. Her name is Kateri.
Right.
Very unreasonable animal. Very unreasonable.
Right. So Kateri.
But don't tell her that, because then she'll be passive aggressive.
Yes. Well, she's always passive aggressive.
She's always passive aggressive. That's right.
So Kateri, the cat, she is one being, 0 persons. Right. But a human being is one being, 1 person. Right. Jesus is one being, 3 persons. So I mean,
you mean God is 3 persons? One God is one being.
Did I say
3
Jesus?
persons. You said Jesus. Yeah.
Okay.
So already heresy.
That would be irrational.
Already we're spewing heresy out across the people.
Yeah.
So no, that's a great way to put it.
You know what I mean? Like,
and some people might ask, what do you mean a cat is not a person? And it's because that a person is. What that means is that it is a being that has the ability to freely choose and is rational, right? That's and there's even more to it, but yeah. So
yeah, you can see how we can play with these numbers of 0 persons, 1 person, 3 persons. We may not really fully understand, but it's not rational because we know that there are beings that are not persons.
Right.
So anyway,
exactly.
That's one example of that.
Yeah, and I got some great insightful comments here from Double Triple Two. He says the logos means the word, right? And in this, and also even deeper, the logos means reason of God. And he also says the unchecked passions are unreasonable. And indeed, that is very true.
That's reason itself.
Yeah.
Who reveal himself.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Logos, the second
flesh.
person of the Trinity.
Yeah, second person, not 3 persons in himself. Yeah, it's very good. Awesome.
Yeah, and just backing up a little bit, I think I would end, if we're moving on, before we move on.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for us to teach our kids how reasonable the church is, because the outside really does tell our kids that the church tells you to believe this, and then they just say believe it. Like they're a bad parent who doesn't explain. And so, I mean, when we're teaching, I think we like to say that we're reasonable. If something seems weird, I promise you it's been addressed. I promise you theologians have written on it.
And I just want to end, the definition of theology itself. There are many definitions, but the one that, the church definitely holds to, it's faith-seeking understanding. Right? That's theology. Right from the bat, right? It's seeking reason, reasons to believe. Not necessarily that we will know with our limited human powers the mysteries of God, but that nonetheless, because Jesus, I'm saying Jesus now on purpose,
Jesus, right.
revealed himself, right? Then we can have access to these mysteries.
Exactly. Yeah. Good stuff. So we got a second. What's the next one? I think we said something about judgmentalism. You want to take that one?
Oh, we're jumping.
Yeah, we're going to jump over here. Yeah, we talked about this before the show started.
I know, and
How long have we been preparing for this.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. We just talked about it today.
So the Catholic Church is judgmental, is a lie.
True or false? Oh, that's a lie.
Oh,
okay.
Well, and I think it's kind of like a half lie,
Yeah.
right?
You know, that reminds me, because I have on my Facebook page a photo of a button that I took that somebody had given me, and it says, "I can tell people are judgmental just by looking at them."
Yeah. And well,
Yeah.
there's some truth. Catholics can be judgmental, but
Right.
not the Catholic Church.
Thank you. Go ahead. Are you going to cover?
Oh, you
my
were going to
topic?
say that? We think alike.
So I think we need to make some clarifications. The first thing I would say is that you know who is judgmental? God. It's very clear over and over in Scripture that there will be a judgment. Jesus says it constantly throughout his 3 years of ministry. But there's this quote from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, 1 through 5, that I think talks about judgment and
Hold
people...
on for just a second. Folks, I just pushed the wrong button. Forgive me. We're back in the live stream right now, but I pushed the wrong button.
Oh.
So we went into like the intro and then some other. Sorry about that, folks. I was typing and then it just ended up.
Okay.
You know, I hit the wrong button.
Just
But
like
we're
for-
back now. It's
for a
not-
few seconds?
it
Yeah,
was
we're
doing it
back.
right there.
We're back. Anyway,
Okay.
Sorry about that. So anyway, so you were saying that you're very judgmental. Go
No,
continue.
So I'm going to read from Scripture, Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. And I think that this gets paraphrased a lot for arguments and directions, so I think it's a good place to start. Judge not, that you not be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So we could talk this whole show about that quote. So I really want to jump to the end there, though, where it says, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye.
Right.
I think it is very clear in Scripture that Jesus expects us to be reprimanding one another, to pushing each other in virtue. And so this idea of, oh, that's so judgmental and we should all just sit on our hands and let each other wander into hell is just crazy, and it's not true and it's not scriptural. So that's kind of my hard stance there.
Well, you know, and the other thing too is that by their own definition, and I say there, I don't want to sound divisive, but the culture, let's just put it that way, says that it frames any kind of corrective action of another person as something that is judgmental. How dare you judge me, telling me that I'm wrong? Of course, judgment, that the kind of judgment that Jesus talks about, that the church says we should not participate in, is to judge the person's heart and make a determination whether or not they're going to go to heaven or hell. Boom, that's it. That's judgmentalism. That's the judgment that's condemned. Everything else, though, especially when it comes to fraternal correction, is something that we're supposed to do. But this culture is that is against all of that. At the same time, is so incredibly judgmental of people, and you see it. You see it on Facebook and Twitter. Just so much anger, and people just assuming, you know, in their statements. I'm saying this objectively speaking. They make statements that are talking about what the other person thinks and feels, and just very judgmental behavior, and a culture that tends to, kind of scream against it. So anyway,
and Jesus used analogies. So to kind of use an analogy, if I'm really struggling in my math class and a student says, hey, I want to help you learn how to do that correctly, my response isn't, wow, you're so judgmental. It's gratitude to that classmate for helping me learn the material so I can do well on the test. Now, I don't want to trivialize the faith here, but
of course,
there is kind of a final test.
But I think you bring a very good analogy about, the school analogy, because the church is a teacher, right? We have the magisterium of the church. The church is mother, and it's also a teacher. And so sometimes we confuse that somebody that is teaching is actually being judgmental.
Right.
But it's pointing us to Christ, who is the truth.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you want to talk about fraternal correction, what exactly is it? Well, it's really just pointing out things that are observable, right? It's just simply objective stuff. It's, I saw you do X, and by the way, I'm not sure if you knew this, but the church teaches Y about said action, and of course it's meant to be positive too. So it's not about what we do wrong, but also how to help each other do right. No, it's also a moral obligation.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, New Testament.
It's a spiritual work of mercy.
Right. Yeah. The admonishing of sinners. Right. But it is tough. It's probably one of the toughest things for us to do in our culture. That takes very, very deep offense to anyone that says anything to anybody about things that they should or should not do. And it's just kind of the way it is right now. And
to carry my analogy just a little bit further, I just think of these things in my head. So I explain the student that is criticized, and I would say that's kind of the Catholics or the priest or all of us participating in the body of Christ.
Right.
But I would say also the teacher. I think Jesus Christ, the faith, the magisterium, is often criticized. And I would say that is because there's a misunderstanding of the topic being taught. So
right.
Jesus comes ultimately to bring us salvation, to bring us freedom, true freedom in this life and the next.
Right.
And that misunderstanding of freedom is where all of our problems come, because there's a culture, a society when Christianity was around, and definitely when it was first being founded, but also definitely right now, that is saying license, ability to do whatever you want, is the freedom we should be striving for. Where, how do we define true freedom? It's the ability to choose the good.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's an issue.
I'd say. And so if we're helping each other to be free, then that means that we have to help each other to do the good. So it's definitely a whole other topic about judgmentalism. But sometimes because the culture is the way it is, we have to meet the people where they're at. Sometimes we do have to preface by saying, look, I am not judging you. I don't know what's in your mind and your heart, but I am your friend, or I love you. And we're assuming that there is a connection of trust, right, and love. And you say, but this is what I saw you do, and because I love you, I just want to tell you this is what the teaching of the church is. Or you might take a different tack and go into the reasonableness of the moral teachings, for example. So, but at any rate, so before we go on to the next one, again, I want to welcome anybody who may have just joined us on Facebook Live, on my fan page, Father Christopher Plans, or maybe on the St. Bartholomew page, St. Bartholomew Katie, or maybe you're watching this on my YouTube channel. So again, welcome. Today we're talking about 5 lies that you have been told about the Catholic Church. So while you're watching, if you can please hit the subscribe button, or hit the like button if you like the video, or follow the channel if you want to, or follow, I keep going to YouTube, follow the Facebook page. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the thumbs up button if you like the video, the live stream so far, and then hit the bell button so that you know that you are going to receive a notification when we start a live feed, a live stream, or when we have a video that I put up on the YouTube channel. So, at any rate, so moving on to the next one, and this one is very, very close to me, so I'm going to take this next one, and that is that the Catholic Church is opposed to science, right? That the Catholic Church and science are at odds against each other. And I'm very surprised about how many people really do believe this, especially after so many years and centuries of tradition. The truth is this, and this has to do with your topic with regard to what reason is, that the church is not reasonable, that religion is not reasonable, right? And where does that come from? Well, it's this kind of, I'm not going to go into the whole history of where it came from, but just how it is now. And we can start first with the understanding of science that is really not science, but it's actually scientism, right? And what is scientism? It's a scientific belief, right? That says that scientific beliefs are destined to replace religion, private religious views, right? And this was something that was explicitly argued in the 19th century by Auguste Comte, right? He was a French philosopher. And his scientific positivism, what does that mean? That means that you can actually determine what the truth is with the scientific method, and that has exclusive access to the truth. So as science begins to find out more, the less we'll need religion, because we're going to be able to understand reality in every single way. That's actually not even a scientific position, because science cannot prove itself, right? Science does not determine, yes, this is how you're going to obtain all of reality. But just looking at the historical reality of the Catholic Church, I'm just going to go through a quick list here of scientists who had a big impact on our culture, on our history, and our advancements in science and technology. So Rene Descartes was a Catholic who discovered analytic geometry and the laws of refraction. So I guess it has to do with light, right? Blaise Pascal was a Catholic, and he was the inventor of the adding machine, the hydraulic press, and also the mathematical theory of probabilities. The next one is the Augustinian priest Gregor Mendel, who founded modern genetics. So our ability to understand the DNA, the very depths of our biology, that was an Augustinian priest who contributed to that. Louis Pasteur, founder of microbiology. Cleric Nicholas Copernicus, believe it or not, the man was a priest. He was a cleric, right? And then listen to this. You know how people say, what, did God create the universe, or was it the Big Bang? You know, that's, I don't want to say foolishness, because I don't want to call people fools, right? For believing that there's a conflict
The
between the two.
gospel this week.
Yeah, exactly. Raka, you fool, right?
Friday.
Now I'm going to be liable to the Sanhedrin. So now I got to go to the Sanhedrin. Where is that? Where's the Sanhedrin? Is it the Katy City Council or something? So anyway, please don't tell the Sanhedrin what I just said. But guess what? Historically speaking, guess where the Big Bang Theory came from? It has its origin in Georges Lemaitre, who was a Belgian physicist and a Roman Catholic priest, right? Financially, and also in the institutions, it was the Catholic Church that supported science. It began at the very birth of what we call now modern science in the 17th century Europe. Guess what? I didn't know this as I was doing research on this. The actual church buildings were actually designed for the purposes not just for religion, but also for the study of scientific knowledge. There are literally cathedrals in Europe that have designs within them to help study the stars. So actually built in, like certain ways of channeling light and certain ways of aligning with the stars. I mean, it's just incredible. And then, so that's the history, right? It's just historically speaking, it's not true, and it still isn't true. But I want to go even into the philosophy of the arguments that say that the Catholic Church is against science and vice versa. And it goes down to that term scientism, right? Scientism is in itself, let's face it, it's a religious belief. It's a religious belief that says that the truth can only be found through the naturalistic scientific method. But as I said already, the naturalistic scientific method, that's basically science. I'm just using the more technical term for it, doesn't prove that. Mm-hmm. So if you're saying that all truth is obtained through that method, well, how did you obtain that truth? You didn't use science. And why is that? What is science? Science is a method of obtaining truth of measurable and observable phenomena. Mm-hmm. So the scientific method cannot measure things like love, things like justice, things like what is truth, things like why do we even exist, things like morality. The naturalistic scientific method is amoral in itself. Not the pursuit of it, it's a good thing, but the method itself doesn't tell us what's good and what's bad. How do we determine that, right? Well, that's where religion comes in. That's where reason comes in as well, right? Rationally, we can actually get a sense of what is right and wrong if we understand that we come from a higher being, a God, right? Even the philosophers, the pagan philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, knew that there was a right and wrong. Okay, so for us then, and this is religion in general, but let's just focus on the Catholic Church. It advances, teaches, safeguards, and helps us put into practice divinely revealed truth, right? And it is what helps us understand the why of our existence. And without the why, we don't know what the what is. And then when I end with a quote from St. John Paul II, that he wrote this letter in 1988 to the director of the Vatican Astronomical Observatory. And this is what he says. And I'm going to end with this because it's so perfect and I can't add anything more after what he says here. He says, science can purify religion from error and superstition. Religion can purify science from idolatry and false absolutes. Each can draw the other into a wider world, a world in which both can flourish. So I'm just going to end right there. Mic drop.
Yeah, always the Catholic approach is a both and, right? Never, it's making distinctions, but it's not either or. It's always a both and that's why I love being a Catholic, because it's not opposed to science, because guess what? God created science,
Exactly
and then
right.
Interestingly,
That's a good way to put it.
I don't like when scientists, they say, oh, I went to the moon or I went to space and I didn't see God. It's like, no, you're not supposed to measure God, because God is outside of the material realm.
Exactly right. Yeah.
You can study, obviously, Jesus, right, who became man, and that's why we have, archaeology and other sciences.
Right.
But, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I studied aerospace engineering when I was at Texas A&M, and I'm a big science freak, and you guys know that I watch YouTube videos about science when you're coming in, and I spout out all of these absolutely useless facts about the natural world. So I'm a big nut when it comes to the science stuff, and especially of space exploration. And don't get me started on the possibility of alien life. So, but anyway, maybe that's at the end. We can talk about that. But yeah, it's I remember going to school at Texas A&M. I went to a class called structural engineering, or structural mechanics was what it was called, and it basically you were just talking about how much weight can a object take before it breaks, or how much would you need to make sure that something will support it, so studying the beams of an aircraft and how far can it bend before it breaks, etc. But I remember that the professor was brilliant, but he kept bashing the Catholic Church, which was so out of context and unprofessional anyway. But he criticized the way we used to do things in building cathedrals. He said, and he was very condescending too. That's the other thing. He would say the Catholic Church would just have poor people put one brick upon another, one stone upon another as they built the cathedrals. And they told them, if you do this, then you'll be saved. You're doing God's will. And then it was dangerous, and blocks fell, and people got killed because they didn't have the principles of engineering, which first of all is just completely false anyway, factually speaking. But secondly, I wanted to say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with people putting their sweat, their hard sweat, their labor, their bodies in doing God's will, in building and doing good things in the world in general, but especially in building a cathedral, And that's going to launch me into another thing about, well, why these nice churches? What about the poor? Catholic Church has all these nice churches. Well, guess what? Who gets to go into these churches? Who gets to enjoy them? The poor. The poor get to walk in and enjoy the beauty and splendor. It belongs to everybody, right? It's not like, well, if a bishop were to build his own house, okay, a palace. Well, that's a different story than from a church where everybody can go in and worship. So anyway, I get really impassioned about this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an expression of the faith. Faith builds those cathedrals.
Exactly right. So
you were gonna say,
mic drop. Mic drop. I'm done. We got a lot of great comments, so maybe we can take a quick break and read the comments. So we can go through this really quickly. I'll read the most recent ones. Double triple two, always with a lot of insight. I find biblical fundamental literalism is driving smart young people from religion. That's exactly right, and we could talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that is, literalism, fundamental literalism is when you're reading the scriptures and you're basically just extracting from those words exactly what they say from the outside and saying, see, that's exactly what it is. So for example, God created the universe, or created the world in 7 days. A literalist would say it was literally 7 days, right? So it's deeply fundamentally flawed, because what that person is actually doing is they're interpreting it based on the modern mindset of somebody that grew up in a fundamentalist environment. So anyway, Double Triple Two says, Father Christopher, are you a mechanical engineer? I was studying aerospace engineering, so I never actually finished the degree. I transferred over into the seminary because I realized I don't think I need to work hard on a senior project at the A&M, designing and building an aircraft. I said, maybe it's time for me to go ahead and go in the seminary, even though I really enjoyed it. Let's see, we have R. Smith, aka Raz, is with us as well. Talking about, I think this was regard to how do we live out our lives when we're struggling with freedom and passion and emotions, and saying I think it all boils down to obedience. I totally agree there. So on the Facebook, we got Beth O'Neill, great quote from, I guess it's from St. John Paul II. Thank you for that, Beth. Macal Martinez, hello, glad you are with us. Now Viviana Sanchez has a really interesting question, but I think it's actually the next lie. She asked the question, what does the Catholic Church think about our soldiers killing people in combat? I was told in our confirmation class it was not a mortal sin. Is this true? Now this is going to get kind of connected to the next lie. And what is that?
Putting a lot in my hands here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit, but I'm going to give the lie here. The Catholic Church and religion in general leads to war. So I think to address this best, it's really important to kind of talk about politics, talk about society. There was a transitioning a little bit from the science we were just talking about. There is a bumper sticker that I cannot stand that you'll see every once in a while in cars, and it says, "Science is true whether or not you believe it." That I think it's basically making, your faith isn't actually true, but you believe it, but science, which I always see that and say that's ridiculous. I believe in scientific method and most science that's out there, But I think that can oftentimes apply to our faith. It's like Catholicism is true whether or not you believe it. And so that really is the way that we operate. That's how we understand the human person, which is how we understand society. So I have this book. I'm going to pitch this book.
Let me read it out to everybody. So this is Reclaiming Catholic Social Teaching, a defense of the Church's true teachings on marriage, family, and the state, written by Christopher Meyer. Hold on for a second. How did that get in here?
It's written by Anthony Esselon, but there is a quote right at the beginning of this that I think is very important.
Let me see the title of the book. Maybe I can help people find it. So Reclaiming Catholic Social Teaching. All right.
Okay. The most fundamental, this is a little bit long, so stick with me. The most fundamental truth about man is that he has been made by God, who is himself love. He is made by God in the image of God, for God. He is made for the enjoyment of that fullness of being. Nothing short of that aim will suffice. Should someone say that is all well and good, if that is what you believe, but we must construct our societies according to a secular understanding of man, we must reply that both of us cannot be correct. If the Catholic Christian view is correct, if man is made by God in his image for the enjoyment of the very life of God, then any society built upon other premises will be radically deficient. So we're all seeking the truth. I mean, we've talked about reason, and so there's this modern idea to pit kind of the political sphere against the church. It's almost like they're trying, or reason against the church and all these things. And the church is true whether or not you believe it. Jesus Christ is our salvation whether or not you believe it, which is why I was alluding to that bumper sticker. So these wars happen because of disagreements on how societies should be running, what's important, and people kind of lose that context because we have this modernist notion that's trying to separate church from the state.
Right.
And so the church really did see, wow, I mean, these people could really change the culture, really ruin the culture, and they were standing up. Not getting too much into detail here, but I do want to read a few quotes. G.K. Chesterton said, "The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. And I think that answers a little bit where the sin comes into play when you're fighting in wars. Now, I have heard it said, and I actually didn't agree with it and was convinced, that a soldier who is killing other men needs to be going to confession, because it's so easy to veer or to kind of turn it into a game, like with yourself, which would be obviously sinful. Or
and I've actually heard I've heard veterans tell me that there are men that would join the military in order to kill. Like they actually have, and I hate to say that because I was also in the military. I was in the Air Force, preparing to be a Catholic chaplain, a Catholic priest in the Air Force, but I discerned not to go in that direction for personal reasons. So some would actually join for that purpose, and it's like, well, yeah, that's part of the reality. Right. Yeah.
And this distinction reminds me a little bit of what we were talking about a judgment. Is the church judgmental? And then, okay, obviously there's people who actually are judgmental. The expectation of the faith is not to be judgmental. The faith is not judgmental. It's trying to give you true freedom.
Exactly.
And in the same way, I think in its proper form, I don't think killing in war is a mortal sin. It's not. It's not just that I think that objectively it's not.
Of course.
Now, I definitely think there's cases where it is.
Right. Well, in general, objectively speaking, that is backed up with self-defense theory, right?
Right.
Now, as far
I'm going to stop real quick. So this is the book right here.
Oh, look at you.
I got a book. Yeah. See, this is fancy. I got all these different skills. So Catholic social teaching. We're claiming there it is right there. So I'll just leave it up there for the next minute, and then you can just kind of write that down if you would like to see it.
And I'll say about this book really quickly. It's very abstract. It's kind of an ideal, but I actually think it's really important for us to understand what the ideal of the church is, because we are so far away from it, and we really do need to heal our bipartisan politics. I mean, it's not about that. We need to heal our society so that our society has the kind of expectations on the political sphere that the church has. Because it's not even close right now. It's just not even close. I mean, anybody who says, oh, the way to true freedom in Jesus Christ is just simply voting for this party is crazy. No matter what. I mean, it is just not that simple. We really need to teach our children what the purpose of society is. And I think this book is definitely an ideal, but I think it's important to know what direction you're trying to move.
Here's something really interesting, and kind of going back to the science. I got a couple of really neat quotes here. I found, Kim Brock says, I found my faith got stronger in college as I took 34 hours of science in a variety of disciplines. She said, I saw God's work. Yeah, so that's really good. I think... Beth makes a good comment about the question of the church making war. That discerning is key, right? To be able to discern, and that's actually connected to just war theory, right? Very much, and that's a whole other Conversing Clergy episode right there. And and I think the other thing is that the Catholic Church has been criticized in her history. Because of the blessing of wars or the blessing of warriors when they would go off and fight, or that religion itself has been a cause of much bloodshed. And well, first of all, that's historically not true. And I wish I had the resources with me, but I remember hearing from a really intense study that was done by an author of a book that studied religious wars. And Bishop Barron talks about this. And what he said was that in this book, it said only 7% of the wars in the history of the world that are on record were of a religious nature, religiously motivated, I think. Now, 7%, I don't know if that's by quantity or the number of people that have been killed. But anyway, it's just not as exaggerated as people make it. And then on top of that, let's just go back to the philosophy of that protest, right? We need to get rid of religion. Religion's bad because it causes wars, right? People have shed their blood over religious belief. Mm-hmm. And some of that is true, but that's not a valid criticism because people have shed their blood over money. They've shed their blood over family. They've shed their blood over land. So maybe there shouldn't be land. Maybe there should ownership of land. Maybe we shouldn't have money, which actually that is an argument that's made, by the way. And then maybe we should, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not a valid argument in itself.
Yeah, go ahead. I think religion in that case, I think it's treated more as an ideology, not as a virtue. Like we were talking one day, the virtue of religion, right? That it's ingrained in us,
Right.
that we know that we crave for the infinite, right? That all civilizations throughout the whole world, they have an inner desire to worship, right? So it's not treated in that case, and I think in that argument, religion is just seen as pure ideology, something that men made up, something or a bunch of laws of morality,
And you see that people lose the sense of primacy of religion. The faith is number one, and it should all flow down from that. You see these
Right.
political candidates that'll come out there and say, oh, well, maybe the Catholic Church will teach their teaching on this or that. And it's like,
Right. Yeah.
okay, you've totally you've switched over to ideology. And now the church to you is a way to get votes or a way to support whatever argument you have.
They just see it as a human institution, nothing
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
That they can change whatever they want for what they want to accomplish in society. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and then we have the last lie that we want to talk about. But first, again, for anybody who has joined us for our stream, Conversing Clergy Live, welcome. We're glad that you're with us. We're approaching more of the end, but we do have a little bit more. So if you want to stick around, please feel free to do so. And also, please, if you're watching this on the my Facebook fan page at FR Plant, please, if you can do me a favor and like the video if you like it.
Here I
See, I messed up again.
at
Hold
your
on.
door.
Okay. if you can hit the like if you like the video. Please follow the page if you would like to do that. Like the page. Do the same thing on the St. Bartholomew fan Facebook page if you're watching it there. My YouTube channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video if you like it. Subscribe and also hit the alert button, the bell, so that you can be alerted to any videos that will be posted. Okay. So our last lie, which one is it, Father Ricardo? You'll take that one, I think.
Yes. So the last lie is the Catholic Church worships Mary.
Well, the Catholic Church doesn't worship
Well,
Mary.
Catholics.
I worship Mary.
Or the Catholic Church teaches that we should worship Mary. So, interestingly enough, there was one point when I was debating some of my friends when I was in Mexico, and they started even in Mexico thinking about these ideas because in Mexico we see a greater emphasis on the devotional life of a Catholic as being Marian. We see Mary statues in the streets all the time, and they take them to a river, and we ask for rain, and we ask for Our Lady's intercession. And so there's a lot of visuals that any Protestant over there would actually freak out, right, because of the expression of the love that we have of Mary. But okay, so this is a lie, of course. I want to try to address this first by explaining the different venerations that we teach, or that the Catholic Church teaches. So there's latria, hyperdulia,
Right.
Proto Dhulia, and Dhulia. So
Medulla oblongata.
what's that?
Was that what you were saying?
Sorta.
Medulla oblongata.
I know, right?
Anybody?
All of
I'm
this-
I'm quoting from the movie Waterboy.
All of
So,
this is
anyway.
Latin. So
I've never seen that. I'm a seminarian.
Yeah.
it sounds like one of those movies. What's that movie about this kid that is a wizard?
Oh, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like
So-
latria,
something-
hyperdulia, protodulia.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Oh, they
They're
take
gonna
it
make
from
things
the Latin.
make things levitate. Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, anyway, latria, it is the highest form of veneration, which actually we have a word in English, right? It's worship. It's adoration, worship, and this belongs only to God, right? Then underneath that form of veneration, we have hyperdulia, which this is for our Blessed Mother, right? It's Why do we have a different word for her? Because she is the most exalted of all creatures. But notice, creature, right? The Catholic Church teaches that Mary is a creature. Now, after that, we have Proto Dhulia, which this is due to Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph receives Proto Dhulia. Proto, what does that mean? First, right?
Yeah, first.
So Saint
right.
Joseph, among
right.
the saints, he is given the first place, and that's why Saint Joseph, we venerate him with Proto Dhulia. And then the angels and the rest of the saints is Dhulia, right? So anyway, this is a good, language matters, right? When we talk about theology, philosophy, when we have arguments, right? We need language. And so this really helps us to say that, no, we don't worship Mary, but we do have a high veneration that is different from other saints. And, I also want to bring this answer as the role of Mary, right? Why do we hyperdulia Mary? Well, Mary, she has 5 privileges. And the 5th one is not yet a dogma, but is an official teaching. It's actually in Vatican II documents. In Lumen Gentium, there's a chapter there dedicated to Mary. But the first one is because she is the mother of God, right?
Right.
And now, all these privileges of Mary, right, is because of Jesus, right? It's all about Jesus. So Mary is the mother of God. What are we saying there? We're saying that Jesus is God, right? Because Mother is Mary of Jesus, Jesus is God. Therefore, logically speaking, Mary is the mother of God. Perpetual virginity, right? Mary was virgin before, during, and after the birth of Jesus. We have tons of quotes in Scripture that backs this up. And then another privilege is the Immaculate Conception, right? Mary was conceived without original sin. Now, some people say, well, are you saying that Mary didn't need to be redeemed? Because Scripture says everybody has fallen to grace. Everybody's a sinner.
Correct.
Well, no, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that God saves in 2 different ways, right? And I love this analogy that somebody that is about to fall, right? There are 2 ways to save that person. Once the person falls and, the person cures him, lifts him up, right? He's back in shape. Another way is before the person falls, right? You say like, stop, don't go there. And so you pull that person, right? So there are 2 ways to save a person or redeem a person. And so Mary was redeemed in the second example. Before she was born, she was saved. And this is amazing because it is God who is outside of time was able to draw the merits of Jesus on the cross and be applied to her in advance.
Right.
How does that happen? Again, God is outside of time.
Right, yeah.
Then the 5th time is that Mary is co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and advocate. Right? Mary plays a unique role in redemption. And I love this simplistic but very profound quote from Mother Teresa about Mary being co-redemptrix.
It's funny you say that because Beth O'Neill just put in here co-redemptrix. She just she just put the word in there. I don't know why she put the word, if she's for it or against it. I don't know, Beth. Who knows?
So Mother Teresa, in her simple language, she says, well, of course Mary is a co-redemptrix. She gave Jesus his body, and the body is what saved us.
Exactly.
Right? So she is co-redemptrix. She participates in the redemption of all humankind.
Yeah.
So there's tons of more things, but yeah, that's something that still a lot of people believe, that we worship Mary, or they're afraid. They're afraid to love Mary so much that they are going to worship her. But I would tell, if you have that fear, I would say you cannot love Mary more than Jesus, because Jesus loves her perfectly. And we cannot ever love like Jesus because we're not perfect. So don't worry, you're not going to worship Mary.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I had a girlfriend, and my friends thought I spent too much time with her.
You had a girlfriend, and you also had friends?
Yeah, I know. It's a lot.
Can
it's
you
a lot
believe
to take
it?
in. So I had a girlfriend.
He's normal.
and my friends thought that I hung out with her too much. So I decided not to hang out with her every single day for a month to prove that I didn't hang out with her too much. And then she broke up with me. No, that didn't happen. That was an entirely made up story. But I think that we do that with Mary sometimes. We like almost try to prove to whether it be Protestants or whoever, oh no, like we're not worshiping Mary. Don't worry. And we're not praying the rosary. We don't have this devotion. And I mean, I think kind of Satan's had his way.
Yeah. In fact, you know what I said in a homily not too long ago, I want to say maybe it was a month ago, and I said, we are through apologizing for our relationship with the Blessed Virgin Mary. We're done. You know, it's kind of like get on the bus because we're going, or get off, right? It's get on the Mary bus.
Yes.
You know, get on with us, join us in loving our Lord Jesus Christ by honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary. I can't think of a single moment where somebody who had a devotion to Mary did not have a relationship with Jesus. Now, we can say that the expressions maybe in the history of the church or some of the theology had been kind of messed up. You know, it's like, you know, Mary is merciful and Jesus isn't, right? Yeah. That kind of a separation, you know, so it has to be purified. But the dismissing of devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, or at one time I've actually seen it where there was an attempt to place Mary as the same level as all the saints, you know, and I've heard people that studying in the seminary or religious sisters speak in that way, and it's like, nope, I'm sorry, no, Mary is the Queen of all saints. She is our Queen. So yeah.
Isn't it interesting? And I think this is in the St. Joseph book as well, that we basically never say Saint Mary, only in buildings and institutions. We're never like, oh, Saint Mary, she's my favorite saint.
Obviously,
it's like she's just like above that. You don't call her saint. She's the blessed.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Mary. Yeah, that's right. Saint
Mary.
Mary. Yeah,
Mother Mary.
Mother, Virgin Mary.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. It's really interesting to realize that our love for Mary will never, you know, be distorted to worship because we love her because we know who she is, right? She points us to Jesus. She's the mother of God. Right. So that's why it's so important to know these dogmas or privileges of Mary, because we can give reasons for our faith. Now, you know, today is the International Day of Women. You know that, right?
It's the International Day for Women?
For women.
I didn't know that.
Women's Day.
I don't keep track of all these
but anyway,
days.
You know, that would be...
There's all these
today
days.
Is Sunday.
Today, you know, today is International Day for Women. Today is International Day for...
No, it was actually a weekend.
It's just, I can't keep track of
all.
Yeah,
the whole weekend. It was something huge throughout
I'm not against it, by the way, and having an International Day for Women. It's just, I can't keep track of them all. You go to the USCCB website, and they've got, you know, some kind of a day, some kind of a month, some kind of a year. Anyway, but I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that because if you go social media, especially in Mexico, but everywhere, this is a universal thing. It's all about that. It's all about Women's Day, and a lot of women, you know, are in the streets and protesting about their rights and all of that. And that would be another lie, right, of the Catholic Church, that the Church is anti-women. And so with this notion of Mary, it's like, no, we have Mary as the woman who changed the world. Right, the woman who changed history forever, right? It was a woman, and so that's why we have an Proto Dhulia kind of veneration towards her.
I think we've had a lot of great conversation here, and you know, it's just going through those 5 lies, and there's so many more. We could probably do another segment on 5 lies or misunderstandings that we've been told about the Catholic Church. But I think we can kind of go into some Q&A before we kind of wrap it up. And we had a really good question here, going back to the question about killing and war, right? So Irma Rojas says, so killing isn't always a mortal sin. Does that mean every mortal sin has room for interpretation? I'm still confused. Something I can tell you, you're thinking about thou shalt not kill, right? That commandment. Well, first, there's limitations on translation, you know, from the Greek over to the English, and what killing means for us and what killing means in that context. We can keep in mind that in addition to that 5th commandment, thou shalt not kill, there was also written within the Old Testament laws with regard to capital punishment. You know, so people who committed certain kinds of sins, like adultery, for example, would be stoned, right? That's an act in the English word, killing, right? but that's not what the fifth commandment is actually saying, right? It is, and I think someone else, Anna Marie said it, that thou shalt not commit murder, I think. It's really talking about unjust killing, right? That's really what it's talking about. So, going back to what you were saying there, Irma, so killing isn't always a mortal sin. Does that mean every mortal sin has room for interpretation? I guess another way to kind of rephrase that is that we have to, yes, discern what was the purpose of the ending of another human life, right? What was the purpose of it, and what was the context, and what are some objective truths with regard to human life, right? And now we just started another Conversing Clergy episode.
Right? Well, and I think there's something that's important to point out here is that grave matter in mortal sin. Grave matter basically means it could definitely be a mortal sin, but there's requirements that must be met for something to be a mortal sin.
Correct. That's true.
Knowledge, freedom,
and
will.
grave matter.
Grave matter. So the other two are knowledge and freedom.
Right.
Unless I feel like doing it, then it's right.
Yeah. That's.
Don't judge. Don't judge me, man. Come on.
Don't judge.
I mean, we have to maybe Irma, can be. She probably knows this, but there are intrinsic evils.
There goes my phone.
Right. There are some intrinsic evils, and so those are always evils, no matter the circumstances, no matter nothing. I mean, they're always evil in themselves. I mean, one is abortion, right? And there are others that the church talks about. But what I'm bringing now is that how do we judge, going back to judgmental, how do we judge the morality of an action? Well, you need to check the act itself, you need to check the circumstance, and you need to check the intention in order to realize that it's actually a morally grave.
Right. Yeah. If it's there's that distinction between something being mortal and then in itself objectively being grave.
Yes.
Right. And I think it was more of the sense of what Irma was asking too, whether killing isn't always a mortal sin, that there's interpretation. And yes, and the answer is yes in the English sense of the word killing. So is killing grave matter when it comes to just war, where a sovereign over a sovereign nation makes a decision to wage war in order to defend his country? And that includes ending human life. In that case, that is not grave matter. That's not gravely evil, right? And in some cases, it's obligatory, right? So that would be one example. But going into someone's house, killing them in order to take their money, grave matter, always, right? And then now whether or not it's a mortal sin, that's when the mortal sin question comes in, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, mortal sins are always mortal sins because
sins are always mortal sins.
You already labeled
by definition.
But
two is always a two. There you go.
Grave actions, they are open to interpretation whether they can be mortal or not. Right.
We have MJ Arienza is tuning in from Holy Trinity, one of our seminarians. MJ, hello. Glad you can join us. Maybe we can have you on our show as well at some point in the future. We have some other really insightful quotes. Double 222 says, Mary is better known as a Theotokos, God-bearer. Mother implies Jesus had a human father. I'm not exactly sure if that's true, or maybe I'm misunderstanding. But Theotokos means God-bearer. That's correct. But also bearer can also mean mother. At least that's the title that we give in English.
So the word actually in Greek, right? Theotokos. Right. It's more the nurturer, and so that's why we have mother, right? Because she actually nurtured Jesus, right, and his humanity. So no, I think it's an accurate translation.
Oh, and there were huge debates in the early church about that. I mean, Mother of God is an official title that we have to believe. We have to acknowledge.
I think, but she's actually talking about tokos, like that word.
Tokos,
that it would be better if we translate it as bearer. But Mary didn't just lend her womb to carry Jesus. No, she nurtured Jesus.
Correct.
And that word actually implies also nourishment,
right? And
so that's why mother, it's a very good translation.
Yeah, even spiritual nourishment. I mean, it wasn't just in every way that a mother can be a mother to a man, Mary was a mother to Jesus Christ. And even more so, there's an even deeper reality there. Well, very good. Are there any other questions? This is Q&A. It's open, so for the remainder of the stream, I think maybe 10 more minutes, we can talk about anything you want to talk about, or give us some topics for the future. Or do y'all have anything to say? Anything else to add?
I was looking up. You saw me looking at my phone earlier. I kind of want to go back to this. I love this. G.K. Chesterton has the best quotes on everything. Him and Fulton Sheen.
We have so many great Catholic philosophers, theologians, thinkers, writers. I mean, it just...
Well, I just love this when talking about science, because I think some people do start to get scared. And I remember I used to have this fear, like, the universe is so vast. I mean, is this all still real? Jesus came to see this little speck and all this stuff. And I've heard a couple good things. I remember I heard this really intelligent philosopher kind of laugh at the question and say, God doesn't run out of paint. Just very serious. It's like he can make the universe as big as he wants. It doesn't make any of this less true. But this quote from Chesterton is great. He said, "Why should a man surrender his dignity to the solar system any more than to a whale? If mere size proves that man is not the image of God, then a whale may be the image of God. A somewhat formless image, what one might call an impressionist portrait. It is quite futile to argue that man is small compared to the cosmos, for man was always small compared to the nearest tree."
He also, there's another quote that I'll never forget. He said that, he said one time, talking about how the grandeur of the universe is in itself enough that there isn't a need for a God, right? That we find the universe in itself, in its grandeur and its power, that which can be the fulfillment of man. But then he says, without God, the universe is empty, because it's empty of meaning. And so then the universe becomes a prison, just a really big prison. And I love his quotes. So, yeah.
I also love to look at just what's happening in the universe. Just listen to the scientists, and what do they tell you about the universe all the time? That it's expanding. The universe is expanding. And it's like, okay, so this universe with matter is expanding. Think of our concept of expanding. It expands. We see it. It always expands into something, into the surrounding area. And it's such an interesting idea to think that this universe is expanding into non-universe.
Yeah, now you're getting into
which
astronomy.
I believe in. I'm not arguing that is what happens, but it's so much easier for me to at that point say, "Oh, then God." Like God exists.
Well, think about the reality also that because the universe is actually accelerating in its expansion, that astronomers are saying at some point what will happen is that there will be a massive heat death of the universe, that there will no longer be any energy left, and they're talking about giga years from now. They're talking about when even the black holes will have eaten themselves up, and so the universe will not sustain itself, right, in the way that it's moving right now. So anyway, I think that's a really cool topic we can go into. We do have some questions that came up here. Also, welcome to anybody that has come in. This is closer to the end of our stream, but we're very glad that you're here with us. We're in our Q&A section, and just let us know if there's anything that we can talk about. But here's a question here. Why does Pope Francis call the idea of declaring Mary co-redemptrix foolishness? Cardinal Ratzinger also is on record as saying that term causes misunderstandings. Are there any thoughts on that? I think what he's talking about there, he's talking about a dogmatic declaration, I think is what he's talking about as well, about declaring Mary as co-redemptrix. From what I remember, that's what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, especially speaking of Ratzinger, I think the reality is that word co implies equality. It just does. It's kind of turned into that. We've talked about how language takes on meaning, and then it's really hard to get rid of that meaning. And I think that was, Ratzinger was like, he clearly believes it. I mean, he believes it, but if every time you write co-redemptrix, you have to clarify, we're not saying that Mary is on the same level as Jesus, it just gets kind of complicated.
I mean, and the title's used. It's used in devotions. St. John Paul II used the term.
Yeah.
I think maybe the problem that we're having is with it being dogmatically proclaimed. And it is something that's debatable. I think. I mean, it's again. I think it's a helpful term, but yeah, you want to be careful.
I'm not sure exactly about those quotes, but I mean that dogma is. We're so close for the church for the church to declare it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
And there can be legitimate disagreements in the church, even with the Pope, right? Mm-hmm. That's a legitimate thing. It's another conversing clergy, right? The role of the Holy Father, the bishops, and also how doctrine develops over time. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of Marian apparitions, will declare that pretty soon. It's just we need that dogma. We need to Hyper Dhulia Mary, and I think that dogma will actually bring people a better understanding of her role in salvation.
Amen. So I think what we can do, I think Sepulcoder had a good idea about plugging the Knights of Columbus of St. Bartholomew.
No,
I think is that KCB or what is
No,
that?
that's Katie Catholic Brewing.
Katie Catholic Brewing.
They're doing micro beer.
Oh,
Micro
okay.
brew. We actually have a couple of their koozies
I'm
here.
not sure if I want to plug anybody that's not going to sponsor the channel.
Yeah,
but I think we just did.
So we're not. Just to be clear, we are not condoning drinking Katie Catholic Brewers beer.
And we're not condemning it either.
What
do you think I'm drinking right now? What do you think I'm drinking in the mug right now? Anyway,
hey, if you
it's coffee.
He's allergic to beer. He would drink it if he could.
He can provide free beer next time, and we'll.
Hey, sounds good. Then we can say, hey, this is conversing clergy.
I was supposed to help them.
We'll be slurring clergy, not conversing clergy at that moment.
I was supposed to help them with the logo.
Oh, okay. Oh, and by the way, that the coffee mug logo with the conversing clergy, I brought that out from a website that where we can actually purchase those and all that. But then Father Ricardo took it another step up, and he put the collar on the coffee when you see it at our end. So
it's because I'm very clericalistic.
Very clericalistic.
I've heard.
Yes, very very clericalist. It's all about the priest, man. All about the priest. Awesome.
No, the color it's neat.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a nice touch. So anyway, so thank you so much for joining us tonight in our conversing clergy. I'm just trying to get us away from that conversation about clericalism. We can always talk about it later on. So, what is this? Christopher Newman. This is from Aggie Chris. Christopher Newman, MD, official pediatrician of St. Bartholomew.
Now we're just reading ads.
I'm just gonna start reading here. Yeah, Mary Cruz. She asked me, "Is it Scotch in the mug that I have here?" I never reveal what is inside the coffee mug when we get together in our conversing clergy.
So we're not going to reveal what we have?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They had to guess. So actually, it is Kona coffee. And what did you have? What kind of Scotch do you have in your mug?
I already had a lot of caffeine today, so this is just water.
Just water. That's boring. And what do you have?
I was doing the Kona.
Oh, you're sporting the Kona as well. Well, very good. And thank you, Terry, for the Feliz Cumpleaños. I did have my birthday was yesterday, and I am 41. I keep saying I am officially in my mid-40s.
Wow.
So
it's kind of scary.
And one more time,
we're off the rails, so I'm picking up the trophy.
One more time, we got to look at this trophy here, and so
in our faces.
Hey, but there's always next year, and eventually these guys are going to be priests. So eventually, Christopher Meyer will be on the priest team,
and then he's going to lose.
So my goal, I played in every game so far, and it's now 2-2. My goal is for the seminarians to be winning 4-2 by the time I'm a priest. And then we're going to win 3 in a row, and the priests are going to be winning.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. No, I don't think so. Oh, we got some great quotes here before we close up. So, Nadia, thank you for the happy birthday. Nadia also says the beer was delish. And also, Aggie Chris says checks are coming in the mail, Padre. So, for sponsoring the beer. Or the beer, for sponsoring the channel.
And his pediatrician.
That's right. That's Chris.
Yeah. Well, very good. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Conversing Clergy Live. We hope that you like the setup here. We're trying to make it a little bit better as we move along. So we're just very enthusiastic about coming together as Conversing Clergy. Please, if you can, before you are done for tonight, remember to see. This is where I need to be careful. I'm going to push the right button so that it won't exit us out of the video. Okay. Hold on. Here we go. There we go. Yeah. So go to the if you're on the Facebook page, please follow the page or like the page, and if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up. And if you're on YouTube, please do the same thing. Just hit all the buttons. Hit them all. Thumbs up, subscribe, the alert bell so you know when our video is uploaded and when a live stream gets. What are you doing right now? Are you petting the subscribe button? So very good. Again, I'm Father Christopher Plant I'm the pastor of St. Bartholomew in Katy, Texas.
I'm Father Ricardo, the parochial vicar at St. Bart's.
And I'm Christopher Meyer, the lowly seminarian.
Till next time, God's blessings to you.
Here I am at your door. Would you let me in? I have gained all the world, restless heart again. And I've been here before. How do you forgive? I just wanna feel you move closer. Would you make your move? It's your endless love. There